The first time I saw Terra Voss pick up something sharp, I thought she was about to commit a social violation that would get her expelled from the Galactic Preparatory Institute. Instead, she just smiled at the blade hovering near her throat and asked if anyone wanted to see a trick. Let me back up. My name is Kelix, and I am what most species consider reasonably intelligent. I passed the entrance exams to GPI with a 92% score, which placed me in the top 15% of applicants from my homeworld of Threnix Prime. My scales are a pleasant shade of amber, my 4 eyes provide excellent peripheral vision, and my diplomatic skills have been praised by 3 separate instructors. I mention all of this because I want you to understand that I am not easily rattled. Terra Voss rattled me from day one. She walked into advanced xenopsychology wearing clothes that looked like they had survived a small war, boots that made aggressive sounds against the floor, and an expression that suggested she found the entire universe mildly amusing. Her hair was tied back in something she called a ponytail, which seemed inefficient for a species without actual tails, and she carried a bag that appeared to be held together by sheer stubbornness and something called duct tape. "Deathworlder," whispered my roommate Plix, his antenna quivering with either fear or excitement. "Possibly both. Class 9. Planetary origin. Look at those eyes." I looked. Terra's eyes were brown, which should have been unremarkable except for the way they seemed to catalog every exit, every potential threat, and every student in the room within approximately 3 seconds. Her gaze lingered on me for a moment, and she smiled. Not the polite smile we had learned in Introduction to Interspecies Courtesy. Something sharper. Something that suggested she knew exactly how uncomfortable she made everyone and thought it was hilarious. Professor Velnith, a Coraxian with excellent credentials and absolutely no sense of self-preservation, decided to use Terra as a teaching example approximately 12 minutes into the lecture. "Miss Voss, perhaps you can tell the class why your species developed such an unusually high pain tolerance?" Terra leaned back in her chair, which groaned ominously under what I had learned was standard human weight. "Well, Professor, we evolved on a planet that was actively trying to kill us pretty much constantly. So we adapted." "Fascinating. And this adaptation extends to psychological resilience as well?" "Depends on the human," Terra said, examining her fingernails like they were the most interesting thing in the room. "Some of us are resilient. Some of us are just really good at pretending we are fine until we can go scream into a pillow later." The class tittered nervously. Velnith's crest flared slightly. "Would you say humans are naturally aggressive? Would you say Coraxians are naturally condescending?" Terra replied sweetly. The tittering stopped. I felt my inner eyelids blink involuntarily, a stress response my species developed back when we were prey animals. Velnith's crest went from flared to fully extended, which among his people indicated either extreme anger or extreme arousal. Given the context, I assumed the former. "That was inappropriate, Miss Voss. So was reducing my entire species to a single characteristic, but here we are." Terra's smile never wavered. "You want to know about human aggression? We are aggressive when we need to be. We are also cooperative, creative, and occasionally stupid enough to try befriending things that want to eat us. We contain multitudes, Professor. Just like everyone else in this room." I decided right then that I either wanted to be Terra Voss's friend or to transfer to a different class. Possibly both. The decision was made for me 3 days later when Carvel decided to be an idiot. Carvel was a Zenthari, which meant he stood roughly 7 feet tall, had 4 arms that could crush most metals, and possessed the kind of ego that could be seen from orbit. His family controlled significant mining operations in the outer spiral, which meant he had grown up believing he was special. The universe had not yet corrected this misunderstanding. He had been making comments about Terra since she arrived, small things at first. Observations about her size, which was average for a human but small compared to most GPI students. Questions about whether Deathworlders should really be allowed in advanced classes. Suggestions that perhaps Terra would be more comfortable in remedial courses with other high-gravity primitives. Terra ignored him with the kind of practiced ease that suggested this was not her first encounter with a bully who outweighed her by several hundred pounds. The incident happened in practical chemistry, which in retrospect was perhaps the worst possible location for what was about to occur. We were learning about chemical bonds, and Professor Tillix had provided each workstation with various compounds and tools for basic experiments. Nothing dangerous, of course. This was an educational institution, not a weapons laboratory. Terra was working quietly at her station, measuring something with the kind of careful precision that suggested humans took lab safety more seriously than their reputation implied. Carvel was at the station behind her, doing the absolute minimum required to avoid failing. "Hey, Tiny," Carvel said, his voice carrying across the lab. "How do you even reach the equipment? Do they make special stepping stools for your kind?" Terra did not turn around. "How do you reach basic intelligence? Do they make special brain enhancers for yours?" Several students inhaled sharply. I found myself leaning forward, scales prickling. Carvel's face, what little was visible beneath his protective visor, turned a color that I had learned indicated rage. He stood, his massive form casting a shadow over Terra's station. "You dare speak to me like that? My family could buy your entire bloodline." "Weird flex, but okay," Terra said, still not turning around. "Your family's money does not make you less of a disappointment, though. That is all you." What happened next occurred in perhaps 5 seconds, but I remember it in perfect clarity. Carvel's upper right arm shot forward, grabbing a glass cutting tool from his station. It was meant for scoring crystallized compounds, but the edge was sharp enough to cut through most materials, including flesh. He moved faster than I had ever seen a Zenthari move, closing the distance between his station and Terra's in one long stride. The knife came up, aimed at her shoulder or neck, or somewhere that would hurt, but supposedly not kill. Terra moved faster. She spun, her movement so fluid it looked choreographed, and suddenly the knife that should have been cutting into her was just hanging in the air between them. Carvel was holding it, but Terra had caught his wrist with both hands, her fingers positioned in a way that looked almost gentle. "Okay," she said, her voice conversational, like they were discussing the weather. "So we are doing this now? Cool, cool, cool." Then she smiled. It was not the polite smile from the first day. It was not even the sharp smile she had given Professor Velneth. This was something else entirely. Something that made my prey instinct scream that I should leave the room immediately. "Fun fact about Deathworlders," Terra continued, her grip apparently not bothering her at all, despite the fact that Carvel was actively trying to push the knife toward her. "We do not have the luxury of formal dueling protocols. No nice, safe challenge procedures. Where I come from, if someone pulls a weapon on you, that means they have decided that killing you is worth the consequences. So you respond appropriately." Carvel's other 3 arms came up, trying to grab her, to push her away, to do something. Terra's smile got wider. "Question for the class. Professor Tillix, this is rhetorical, so you do not need to grade me on it. If I have control of this wrist, and I apply approximately 15 pounds of pressure at exactly this angle, what happens?" "Miss Voss," Tillix began, his fronds going pale with panic. "Please do not." The crack was audible across the entire lab. Carvel screamed, a sound that hurt my auditory receptors. The knife clattered to the floor. Terra stepped smoothly aside as Carvel collapsed, clutching his wrist with his remaining functional hands. "The answer," Terra said calmly, "is that the radius and ulna separate from the carpals, resulting in what humans call a wrist fracture. Hurts like a mother lover, heals in about 6 to 8 weeks with proper medical attention, and serves as an excellent reminder not to pull knives on people who grew up on planets where the weather can kill you." The silence in the lab was absolute. Terra looked down at Carvel, who was now curled on the floor, keening in. Pain. Her expression shifted from that terrifying smile to something that looked almost like concern. Breathe, big guy. In through your nose, out through your mouth. The shock is worse than the actual injury. Professor Tillix, you should probably call medical. Also security. There are cameras in here, right? Good. They will show he pulled the weapon first. She turned to face the rest of the class, and I realized that every student, including myself, had backed as far away from her as the lab allowed. Anyone else want to try their luck? She asked pleasantly. No? Fantastic. Academic honesty is important. She collected her bag, stepped over Carvel, who was still moaning, and walked out of the lab like she had just completed a particularly boring assignment. Professor Tillix managed to unfreeze approximately 30 seconds later and began making the necessary calls. Security arrived within 5 minutes. Medical arrived 2 minutes after that. They loaded Carvel onto a transport stretcher, injected him with something that made the moaning stop, and left. One of the security officers, a Vaxian with impressive credentials displayed on his uniform, turned to address the class. Can anyone tell me what happened? 23 voices spoke simultaneously, all saying variations of the same thing. Carvel attacked Terra, and Terra defended herself. The security officer's mandibles clicked in what I recognized as suppressed amusement. Right? And the human? She said she was going to write her incident report, Plix offered helpfully. Of course she did. The officer made a note on his datapad. Humans and their documentation. Very thorough species. Very fond of having paper trails. Usually means they are expecting lawyers. Will Terra be expelled? I asked before I could stop myself. The officer looked at me with what might have been pity. Son, she is a human from Earth. She broke. His wrist, not his skull. If she wanted him dead, he would be dead. This was her being gentle. And given that he pulled the weapon first in a room full of witnesses and cameras, she will probably get a written warning at most. Maybe have to take an anger management course, but those are mandatory for all Deathworlders anyway. He left, taking his amusement with him. The class sat in stunned silence for approximately 3 more minutes before Professor Tillix dismissed us early. I found Terra in the student commons an hour later, sitting by herself at a corner table, writing on an actual paper notebook with an actual pen. Both items were considered hilariously primitive by most species, but humans apparently enjoyed them. Can I sit? I asked. She looked up, and for a moment I saw something tired behind her eyes. Then the expression vanished, replaced by her usual faint amusement. Free galaxy, she said. Sit wherever you want. I sat, carefully arranging my tail so it would not knock over any furniture. That was impressive. What you did to Carvel. That was necessary, Terra corrected. Not the same thing. Will you get in trouble? She shrugged, a gesture that took me weeks to understand meant uncertainty or indifference, or sometimes both. Maybe. Probably not. GPI has handled Deathworlders before. They know the drill. Someone threatens us. We respond proportionally. His species would have considered anything less than full retaliation an insult anyway. I actually did him a favor. Now he gets to go home and tell everyone he lost to a human in single combat. Very honorable. Much better than saying he tried to stab someone and chickened out. You speak about violence very casually. I speak about reality very casually, she said, meeting my eyes. Violence exists, Kelix. Pretending it does not exist does not make you safe. It just makes you unprepared. Is that what Earth taught you? To always be prepared for violence? Her smile came back, softer this time. Earth taught me a lot of things. How to fight is just one of them. It also taught me how to grow tomatoes, how to identify poisonous snakes by their head shape, how to calculate orbital trajectories using nothing but math and stubbornness, and how to make friends with people who are nothing like me. She tapped her pen against her notebook. You know what else Earth taught me? How to spot someone who is scared but trying to pretend they are not. You have been watching me like I am going to explode since I sat down. Relax, Kellex. I do not bite. Usually. That last word was not reassuring. It was not meant to be. She grinned, and this time it looked genuinely friendly. But seriously, you are fine. I do not hurt people who are not trying to hurt me first. That is kind of the whole point. I felt my scales settle slightly, tension easing. Why did you come to GPI? You could have stayed on Earth, taken human universities. They have excellent programs. Terra's expression went distant for a moment. Because I wanted to see what else was out there. Because staying in one place, even a place as diverse as Earth, felt like giving up. Because someone once told me that the best way to understand yourself is to go somewhere you are the minority and see how you handle it. And? How are you handling it? Ask me again after the disciplinary hearing, she said dryly. But honestly, I am handling it fine. Most people here are decent. Once you get past the initial shock of meeting a Deathworlder, some people, like Carvel, are idiots, regardless of species. And some people, like you, are curious enough to sit down and ask questions, instead of just spreading rumors. Is that why you let me sit? That, and you have kind eyes. All 4 of them. I felt my scales flush with color, an involuntary response to pleasure or embarrassment. Thank you. You are welcome. Now, I have approximately 8 more pages of incident documentation to write. And then, I need to message my mom and explain why campus security has her contact information. Want to grab food after? I hear the refectory is doing something called protein paste surprise, which sounds horrifying and therefore fascinating. I would like that, I said, surprised by my own honesty. Cool! Terra returned to her writing, pen scratching against paper in a rhythm that was oddly soothing. I sat there, watching her work, and realized that I had just made what humans call a friend. A friend who could apparently break bones without changing expression, and who found institutional food fascinating for all the wrong reasons. The next few weeks were going to be interesting. The disciplinary hearing happened 3 days later. Terra wore what she called business casual, which apparently meant clothes that looked slightly less like they had survived warfare. She was polite, articulate, and provided documentation that was so thorough the administration probably could have used it as a template for future incidents. She was assigned 8 sessions of conflict resolution counseling, which she attended without complaint. Carvel was suspended for 2 weeks and required to take a course on appropriate conduct. His family tried to press charges, but given the video evidence and witness statements, their lawyers apparently advised them that pursuing it would just embarrass everyone involved. Terra never mentioned the incident again unless directly asked. She attended classes, completed assignments, and slowly, carefully, began to accumulate what she called her collection of weird alien friends. I was apparently weird alien friend number 1, a title I wore with unexpected pride. But the story does not end there. Because 2 months after the knife incident, something happened that made breaking Carvel's wrist look like a warm-up exercise. Something that proved exactly why you do not threaten a Deathworlder, even a friendly one, especially a friendly one. But that story requires context, preparation, and probably another cup of whatever the humans call coffee, which tastes like burnt plants and somehow gives them energy. I will tell you that story next, if you want to hear it. I suspect you do. The thing about Terra Voss that most people did not understand, even after the Carvel incident, was that breaking his wrist was not a demonstration of her capacity for violence. It was a demonstration of her restraint. I learned this exactly 63 days after she arrived at GPI, during what became known as the Thorian incident. Though calling it an incident is like calling a supernova a minor thermal event. It started with the field expedition. Every semester, GPI organized off-world educational trips to give students practical experience in xenobiology, geology, or cultural studies. Our class had been assigned to Verath 4, a garden world with moderate gravity and supposedly docile wildlife. The perfect location for students from 70 different species to practice observational research without anyone getting eaten. Terra had been skeptical from the moment Professor Marnik announced the trip. Docile wildlife, she repeated, sitting across from me in the refectory. That phrase has gotten more humans killed than actual predators. Verath 4 is classified as safe, I said, reviewing the planetary data on my tablet. Class 3, Biosphere. No apex predators larger than 20 kilograms. Atmospheric composition suitable for 87% of registered species without assistance. Uh-huh. Terra poked at her protein paste, which today was allegedly flavored like something called chicken. You know what Earth would classify as docile wildlife? Deer. You know what deer do? They charge people, kick people, and occasionally gore people with their antlers during mating season. Docile is a relative term. You are unnecessarily paranoid. I am appropriately cautious, she corrected. There is a difference. Plix, who had joined our usual lunch group, along with 3 others who had overcome their initial terror of Terra, chittered nervously. The expedition is mandatory for course completion. We have to go. Oh, I am going, Terra said. I am just also bringing my field kit. What exactly is in your field kit? Asked Jenna, a Pelvorian with excellent language skills and a tendency to ask questions the rest of us were too polite to voice. Terra smiled that smile, the one that made my scales prickle. Stuff. The field kit turned out to contain several items that were technically legal but spiritually questionable. A multi-tool with 17 functions, 3 of which were probably weapons. A medical kit that could handle everything from minor cuts to major arterial bleeding. Water purification tablets. Emergency rations that smelled like sadness and came in packages labeled MRE, which Terra said stood for meals ready to eat, but which everyone agreed actually meant meals rejected by everyone. Rope. Lots of rope. A solar charger. A compass that worked on magnetic principles. And something Terra called a tactical flashlight, which seemed unnecessarily bright for a planet with adequate sunlight. You are aware we will only be there for 4 days, Professor Marnik said, examining Terra's kit during the pre-departure inspection, and that we have full support staff and emergency evacuation protocols. Yep, Terra said cheerfully. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Marnik's sensory tendrils rippled with what I had learned meant resigned acceptance. Very well, but please refrain from alarming the other students. No promises, Terra said, which I think was supposed to be a joke but absolutely was not. We arrived on Verath 4 via shuttle, landing at the research station that would serve as our base camp. The planet was beautiful in that generic garden world way. Blue sky, green vegetation, mild temperatures, the kind of place that made you understand why so many the species sought out colony worlds. Terra spent the entire shuttle ride looking out the window with an expression I could not quite read. What are you thinking? I asked. That it looks like Western Virginia, she said quietly. Same kind of rolling hills, same color trees. Makes me homesick, which is stupid because I left Earth specifically to not be on Earth anymore. You miss it? Of course I miss it. It is home. You can want to leave somewhere and still love it. That is allowed. We were assigned to research groups of 5. Through either luck or intentional scheduling, I ended up in Terra's group along with Plix, Jenna, and a Thorian named Vex, who had not spoken more than 12 words to any of us all semester. Thorians were an interesting species. Large, heavily muscled, with chitinous plating that made them look like someone had crossed a beetle with a warrior from ancient Earth history. They came from a high-gravity world, valued strength above most other attributes, and generally considered humans to be soft, weak, and unworthy of attention. Vex had made his opinion of Terra very clear through the simple method of pretending she did not exist. Our assignment was to catalog plant species in Section 7 of the forest, document any animal life we encountered, and return before sunset. Simple, straightforward. Absolutely nothing could go wrong. We lasted approximately 90 minutes before everything went wrong. The forest was pleasant, full of alien trees that were not really trees but filled the same ecological niche. Terra kept stopping to examine plants, taking samples with careful precision, making notes in her paper notebook because she claimed digital devices always died at inconvenient moments. Vex walked ahead of the group, deliberately setting a pace that was challenging for smaller species, making a point, establishing dominance. Terra ignored him, maintained her own pace, and helped Plix when the terrain got difficult for someone with his body structure. "Thank you," Plix whispered. "I know I am slowing everyone down." "You are not slowing me down," Terra said. "We are not racing. We are researching. Speed is not the objective." "Weakness is not a virtue either," Vex said, speaking directly to our group for the first time. His voice sounded like gravel being crushed. "Some species are meant to follow, others are meant to lead. And some species," Terra said pleasantly, "are meant to compensate for personality deficits by being large and loud. Natural selection is beautiful like that." I felt my inner eyelids close reflexively. Jenna made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Plix went very still. Vex stopped walking, turned around. His plating seemed to darken, which among Thorians indicated rising aggression. "You dare mock me, human?" "I do not mock you," Terra said, meeting his eyes without flinching. "I am accurately describing your behavior. If you perceive that as mockery, maybe examine why. My people have conquered 14 star systems. We have never lost a formal challenge. We are warriors, while your kind were still learning to make fire." "Cool story," Terra said. "My people split the atom, walked on our moon, and invented jazz. We all have origin stories. Want me to be impressed by yours, or can we get back to doing actual work?" Vex's mandibles clicked, a sound that I later learned meant he was approximately 3 seconds from violence. But before anything could happen, Jenna screamed. Not a startled yelp, a genuine scream of terror. We all spun toward her. She was pointing at something in the underbrush, her translator struggling to keep up with the speed of her words. Then my brain processed the shape, the movement, and the implications. The creature was approximately the size of a large earth dog, covered in mottled scales that blended with the forest floor. 6 legs, each ending in claws that looked designed for tearing. A head that was mostly mouth, and eyes that held the particular emptiness of something that saw everything else as food. Varath stalker, Plix breathed. But they are supposed to be extinct in this region, the surveys said. Surveys are frequently wrong, Terra said, her voice dropping into a tone I had never heard from her before. Flat, focused, completely devoid of her usual humor. Everyone back up slowly. No sudden movements. Do not run. The stalker took a step forward, head lowering. Vex, demonstrating either bravery or stupidity, moved between the creature and our group. I will handle this. Thorians fear nothing. Thorians also have armored plating, Terra said. The rest of us do not. So maybe let someone with actual predator experience take point. You? A human? You think you can face a stalker? The creature lunged. What happened next occurred so fast that I had to review the camera footage later to understand the sequence of events. Vex swung at the stalker with one massive arm. The creature twisted mid-air, avoiding the blow, and latched onto his shoulder, plating with its claws. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of teeth designed to penetrate armor. Vex roared, trying to dislodge it. The stalker held on, chewing through his plating with methodical determination. Terra moved. She did not run toward them or away. She angled to the side, moving with that same fluid grace she had shown during the Carvel incident. Her hand went to her field kit, pulled out the multi-tool, and in one smooth motion extended a blade that locked into place with a click. "Vex, hold still," she barked. "I do not take orders from—" "Hold still, or lose the arm." Something in her voice made him freeze. The stalker kept chewing. Terra closed the distance in 3 strides, came up behind the creature, and drove her knife into a specific point where the skull met the spine. The blade went in clean, angled upward, and the stalker went instantly limp, dead, before it knew what happened. Terra pulled the knife free, kicked the corpse off Vex, and wiped the blade on the grass in one continuous sequence of movements that looked like she had done it 1,000 times before. "Anyone else hurt?" she asked, scanning the forest. Stalkers usually hunt in pairs. Where there is one, there is probably another. "You killed it," Vex said, staring at the dead creature. His translator made him sound confused, which was probably accurate. "You just killed it." "Yes, that is generally what happens when predators attack." Terra's eyes never stopped moving, tracking shadows, watching for movement. "Can you walk?" Vex looked down at his shoulder. The plating was cracked, gouged deeply, but his biology was tough enough that he was not bleeding much. "I can walk." "Good. We need to move. Now, back to base camp." "The research," Jenna began. "Is not worth dying for," Terra interrupted. "That stalker was hungry enough to attack a group in broad daylight. Which means the prey population is probably depleted in this area, which means there might be more stalkers looking for alternative food sources, which means we need to leave before we become a buffet." "I agree," I said quickly, before anyone could argue. "We should report this immediately." We made it back to base camp in 40 minutes, Terra walking rear guard the entire time, knife still in her hand, eyes never resting. Vex walked in front, unusually quiet, occasionally glancing back at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Professor Marnik met us at the entrance, took one look at Vex's shoulder and Terra's blade, and began making emergency calls. The evacuation happened within 2 hours. Apparently, finding an extinct predator was sufficient grounds to cancel the entire expedition and file hazard reports that would take months to process. During the shuttle ride back to GPI, Vex approached Terra. She was cleaning her multi-tool with careful attention, making sure no organic material remained. "You saved my life," he said. "I saved all our lives," Terra corrected. "You were just the one actively being eaten at the time. I mocked you, called your species weak." "Yes, you did. You were wrong. Want a medal for figuring that out?" Vex's mandibles clicked again, but this time the sound was different, softer. "Among my people, a life debt is sacred. I owe you." Terra looked up at him, and her expression was tired. So tired. "You do not owe me anything, Vex. I did what anyone should do when someone is in danger. Helping is not supposed to be transactional. Nevertheless, if you ever need assistance, you need only ask." "Okay. Then stop being a jerk to people who are smaller than you. That is the assistance I need." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, his plating shifted to a lighter shade, indicating acceptance. "This is reasonable." "Great. Now let me finish cleaning this before the blood corrodes the mechanism." News of the incident spread through GPI faster than light-speed communications. By the time we returned, Terra had somehow become both more famous and more feared. Students who had previously avoided her now watched from a distance with something like awe. Others whispered about humans and their capacity for violence, their adaptation to Deathworld conditions, their ability to kill without hesitation. Terra ignored all of it. She attended her classes, completed her assignments, and occasionally met me and the others for meals, where we talked about normal things like coursework and station gossip, and whether the refectory would ever serve anything that tasted like actual food. "Does it bother you?" I asked her one evening, watching a group of students literally change direction to avoid walking near our table. "Does what bother me? That people are afraid of you." Terra was quiet for a moment, stirring her soup without eating it. "Yes and no. I understand why they are afraid. I am from a planet that made me into something that can kill efficiently when necessary. That is scary if you are not from that kind of world. But also, I did not ask to be scary. I just asked to exist. And sometimes existing means doing scary things to protect people who cannot protect themselves. Like Vex. Like Vex. Like all of you, if it came to that." She finally took a bite of soup, made a face. "I really hope it never comes to that. Because honestly, fighting is exhausting, and I would much rather just study xenopsychology and eat terrible cafeteria food, and maybe occasionally go to one of those weird social events where everyone stands around being awkward together." Plix chittered, his version of laughter. "You mean parties?" "I mean anxiety festivals with music." "Yes." We laughed, and for a moment, it felt normal, like we were just students doing student things. Then Vex approached our table, moving with uncharacteristic hesitance. "May I sit?" he asked. Terra gestured to an empty chair. "Free galaxy." He sat, carefully, arranging his bulk. "I have been thinking. Dangerous activity," Terra said. "Proceed with caution." His mandibles clicked, the soft sound again. I realized he was learning to laugh. I was wrong about many things. About humans. About strength. About what makes someone worthy of respect. Okay. I would like to apologize. Formally. To all of you. But especially to you, Terra Voss. Terra set down her spoon, gave him her full attention. "Apology accepted. Want some soup? It tastes like regret. But it is hot." And just like that, Vex became weird alien friend number 6. The rest of the semester passed without anyone trying to kill anyone else, which I considered a significant improvement. Terra continued to be Terra, equal parts competent, sarcastic, and mysteriously capable of things that should not be possible. She helped Jenna with her linguistics project, taught Plix basic self-defense holds that worked despite his body structure, and once explained orbital mechanics to me in the way that actually made sense. On the last day of term, before we all scattered to our home worlds for the break, she gave each of us a small gift. Mine was a rock. "It is from Earth," she explained. "From a beach in California. I brought a bunch with me. Figured they would make good gifts, eventually." I held the rock, smooth from water and time, and felt something catch in my throat. "Thank you. Thank you for being the first person brave enough to sit with the scary Deathworlder," she said. "For asking questions instead of making assumptions. For being a genuinely good person in a galaxy that needs more of those. You are a good person too, Terra." "I am a work in progress," she said. "But I am trying. That counts for something." We said our goodbyes, promised to message over break, and went our separate ways. I spent the entire flight home thinking about what I had learned from Terra Voss, about strength and kindness, violence and restraint, fear and friendship, about how the dangerous person in any room is often the one who chooses not to be dangerous, about how Deathworlders earn that classification not just through capacity for harm, but through capacity for survival against impossible odds, about how a girl from Earth could smile at a knife and end a threat not through overwhelming force, but through perfect application of just enough force to solve the problem. I returned to GPI the next semester with new confidence, new understanding, and a small earth rock that I kept on my desk as a reminder. Terra Voss taught me that being from a death world does not make you a monster. It makes you someone who knows exactly how fragile life is, and fights like hell to protect it anyway. Even when that means breaking a wrist. Even when that means killing a predator. Even when that means being patient with scared people who need time to understand that dangerous and evil are not the same thing, she is still my friend. Still weird alien friend number 1, and I am grateful every single day that when someone dared to draw a knife in class, the Deathworld girl just smiled, because that smile meant she had already won, and we were all safer for it.